I'm good.
Hi there. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm joined by Megan O'Neill. She's business mindset strategist, and she works with high performing entrepreneurs and high performing executives to help them improve their mindset and help them get to the next level. Welcome, Megan.
Hello, how are you? Nice to
Thank
see you.
you. Thank you for joining me today. So, Megan, I've told you in the past that some of the clients that we tend to work with at C plus B Digital are really high achieving marketers. They're senior in their field. They are, experienced. They've got a lot of good things going for them. So I wanted to just sort of speak to people in that space, maybe flag the fact that a lot of the times we're all stressed out, busier than we want to be. We've constantly got changing priorities on the go. Many of us are
overwhelmed.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
things like that. So I was wondering if you could speak to mindset, maybe, start by telling us what it is and, setting the context for us.
Okay, so mindset is sort of the new buzzword. If there's a marketing word, actually, mindset is it right now. So for years and years and years, I identified myself actually as a belief specialist. And I've actually switched to mindset because I find that people identify with it. And what it really is, from my point of view, is mindset is just a system of beliefs. So if I said to you, listen, Susan, I've got, this is my money mindset in this area, or this is my mindset around parenting. We have mindset or beliefs around every single situation in our life. I have a friendship mindset. This is how I act when I am with my friends. And so we go in and out of these subconscious beliefs in whatever area. So when people are talking about improving their mindset, they're essentially talking about improving their belief system around a subject. So the classic one that I always use is money mindset. So if I say to you, well, my money mindset is that I'm not going to pay. I'm not going to pay a lot for that particular item. I'm not going to pay a lot for that service. Or I think that's worth $1 million. So we have different beliefs that support whatever that is around money. Maybe, for example, I think anybody who has ever been a contractor and having to deal with a client to bill them, their money mindset will be, well, I'm a little bit nervous about sending that invoice to my client because perhaps they're not going to think that those hours are worth it and I shouldn't have billed for those hours. That's when your money mindset will come up.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Keep going.
Yeah. So, I think that the reason why it's become so popular in the present day is that people are starting to turn inward. They're starting to look at what's going on within themselves, because I think that we have a lot of abundance in our life. Just nobody's really struggling to necessarily, like they did in ancient times or even a couple generations ago, with putting food on the table. We're now going beyond that. We're looking inward. We're looking for meaning in our life. And so we understand the connection between what we believe and what the end result is. So what I often say to my clients is that, simply our beliefs create our reality. They're the lenses in which we see the world. So if I think, and I laugh because I used to use this as an example all the time, is I have an Uncle Lauren. Everybody has an Uncle Ed or an Uncle Lauren or an uncle. And he's notoriously cheap and thinks that everybody is going to rip him off. So he'd be like, oh, that guy's going to rip you off. The mechanic's going to rip you off. And lo and behold, Uncle Lauren is constantly getting ripped off. And that's because his subconscious organizes itself around proving that belief to be true. So to make that reality true, he has to find like the sketchiest mechanic that he could possibly find. And then that proves that he is right. So we're always looking for proof to support our beliefs. And I think that the reason why we're sort of now becoming more reflective and, we've had an evolution of thought and we're much more educated as a population, that we're starting to connect that whatever is going on within me is not just outside of myself, but perhaps it has something to do with me.
The self-awareness piece.
You and I have talked about the expression self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite true.
Yeah.
The self-fulfilling prophecy is that if I think that Uncle Lauren's case, if I think I'm going to get ripped off, then guess what? I get ripped off. If I think that I can never do it, I'll never be able to learn that. I'm uncoordinated. I've heard this from girlfriends of mine over the years. I'm so uncoordinated. There's no way I could possibly do that sport, because that belief was established at a young age, and they're carrying forth that. And their evidence is that, well, I'm not even going to try because there's no point, because I'm just uncoordinated. There's the belief.
Right. And it's interesting because, on the surface of it, something like this sounds terribly like woo-woo, right? You're like, oh, I believe that and therefore it happened. But it's actually really logical. It's like when you believe something, to my mind, you're going to start taking actions towards the thing that you believe. If you're like, oh, I'm never going to get there on time, you're going to be slower about leaving, and you'll be like, drive a little slower or whatever. In the end, you're like, see, I said I was going to be late. I'm late. It's not woo-woo. It's actual actions. It's when you think something, it pushes you towards the actions that you believe in, and then those actions have a consequence, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, because our mind is brilliant. That's the thing, is that our subconscious is quite brilliant, and it's organizing itself to support what we believe. So yeah, those little self-sabotage, like you said, being late. We all know people who are late, and some of them have that as a way to essentially, even though self-sabotage sounds like, why would anybody want to self-sabotage themselves? There actually is a benefit to it, in my experience, when people do these things.
What is the benefit to self-sabotage?
Well, often, this is going to sound really interesting, but it is absolutely true, and I've said it many, many times to my clients over the years, is if you have something that is continued in your life, what I would call the status quo, there's always a benefit to it. And the benefit, although that sounds like an oxymoron, the benefit is often protection. So if I'm, for example, if I'm procrastinating, because I've worked on that a million times with people, if I'm procrastinating around something, usually if you dig down deeper and you find out, well, what are the beliefs under the procrastination? The procrastination being an action or inaction. The benefit is then if I don't do it, then I won't fail. So I'm protecting myself against failure.
So safety net, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how perhaps marketers can apply some of this to their lives, right? We talked about the constantly changing priorities and the fact that we live in a highly incendiary time, right? I mean, people get offended about things easily. You're either going to fall into a camp of people who believes very deeply in favor of something or against something. There's always like trolls out there in the social media space, and we're perhaps more visible today as individuals and people and companies than ever before, right? So in this environment, to my mind, as the marketers and the communicators, we have a responsibility to elevate the marketing, right? You don't want to go out there and just throw everything on the wall and hope it sticks, which is often the case. And often the reason why marketing doesn't work is that you're trying too much of a one-size-fits-all approach, or you're being afraid to step out into something unusual. Like some of the work that we do with people, regardless of what size, was try to get them to identify what's different, right? What is your point of difference? And then possibilities are that the answer to your difference is really where your zone of genius is, and that is what you should be using in marketing. But it's often hard, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what marketers might be facing, what must they be thinking about in that space where you're not sure about doing the new thing.
Right. And I think that to a certain degree, I think doing something new to most people can be very scary. And I think that the belief behind doing something that is not tried and true was that's what we were conditioned to think in many ways. Your parents might have deterred you from taking risk. I often talk to female entrepreneurs, and I find that females are more risk adverse, actually, in many ways. And that can be, as an entrepreneur, that can actually work against you. And the belief behind that is tapping into what I would call your right brain or your creative side to find solutions, is because, once again, it goes back to, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't produce what I'm supposed to produce? And that's where the subconscious can come in and really sabotage us and keep us stuck, like in form of procrastination, right?
Right. Yes. Yes. And we were also talking about the idea of how people might be able to spot some of this, right? So often I hear from people whenever I say mindset, I get a lot of laughs from people when I'm like, I keep talking about the mindset and I say mindset is the new black, like, I'm
Yeah.
all about it.
Yeah.
So when I talk to people about that, I sometimes see a look of, yeah, I don't think I have any mindset issues. And it's usually because you don't actually process the things that hold you back. This is me being, extremely analytical, but like, so I wanted to talk a little about what you said about how you might spot it by putting on your scientist hat and really
Yeah.
observing.
Yeah. Actually, I was just talking to you about right brain, left brain, and I think you can use both of those. So our left brain is like associated with being analytical and observing and, recognizing patterns. And that's a wonderful thing. But we also can use the other side of ourself, which is the feeling. The right brain is associated with empathy, with feeling, with emotion. So we can use both of those to recognize when we have a belief that might be limiting. So meaning that when I say put on your observing cap, what do you notice is a pattern? Where is everything? Where's everything dissected and related back to you? So, for example, I noticed that I always seem to be in these situations, or I'm always attracting this into my life. Don't just take that as something that's outside of yourself. Look at what the pattern is. Start to really break it down. So there's the left part of the brain. How I often identify when I am getting stuck in a belief or where a belief is not serving me is I observe that I have a feeling every time I go into a situation. So in relation to being visible, because we were talking about being visible on social media, and visibility is part of, so much a part of the modern day, being visible on social media, being visible as you grow and you build your career, you become more visible. And one of the things that I noticed with myself the other day was that the belief around talking about myself. Now, I have to talk about myself in order for people to understand what my service is. But I was taught growing up that talking about yourself is rude and self-absorbed. So when I was talking to myself at a networking meeting the other day, a belief that I noticed, because I was noticing that I felt really discomfort as I was talking, and people were asking me questions about what I do. And then all of a sudden I went, ding. I noticed that there was, through the discomfort, what's the belief that's connected to the discomfort? And that was that it's not polite to talk about yourself.
Right.
It's selfish. So that belief doesn't really work in the modern day, does it?
Nope, not
Doesn't
so
really
much.
work out.
Not so
So,
much.
so you can
Yeah.
approach it two ways: by paying attention to the feeling of discomfort or anxiety or something that doesn't feel natural or normal and
Yeah.
something you don't want to feel. And then the other side is, where are the patterns? What are you noticing? How are you connected to it? How does it come back to you?
Right. And that is something I guess as marketers we're definitely familiar with because we work a lot with like data and you have analytics and you look at that and then you derive your insights from them and decide what you must do and stuff like that. So in a lot of cases, this patterning that Megan is talking about is much the same. Start noticing the patterns. What are the things that tend to make you react the same way? What brings out the fear? What brings out, the anxiety and the loss of control and that kind of stuff, right? So
Sure.
to my mind, that is something that marketers would identify with, as well as the thing that you said about the right brain, right? Much of the field is creativity and sort of really paying attention to your feelings. I think
Yeah.
that's probably what is going to take things to the next level and make a more elevated level of marketing when you're not just doing a one size fits all, but you're catering to like a wider
Yeah.
emotion.
And
Yeah.
that might be the most important thing in the modern day, right? As we become more conscious and more accepting of our emotional intelligence or our creativity or what I was identifying as the right brain, that would be the way in which we could elevate your marketing or elevate anything within your life, really, is to really tune into that and I think honor that and value that.
Right. And when you were talking about having the feelings, one of the things that I found quite curious about what you said, and I've noticed it since then, is the idea that the feeling can actually you feel it in your body. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a belief, there's often a bodily sensation that is associated with that belief. So if I feel that I can't do something, I was talking about sports, if I feel like I'm too uncoordinated, then I'm going to be nervous as they approach me to play in this league that they're organizing. there's always a feeling that's associated with a belief. And I often will ask that question with my clients, where are you feeling that? And what's the feeling behind that? What belief is behind the feeling? And that's how people discover their beliefs. Those are like those road signs that tell me, because if you are what I call in your adult mind or your conscious mind, then you are not feeling nervous. You're feeling pretty confident. You're feeling clear. You have the experience to tell you you can do something. You might have the confidence to try something new. But if you're going into almost what I would call childlike feelings, like nervousness, like not feeling confident, then you know that's a clue that you have a belief that's rattling around somewhere within you.
Right.
Yeah.
That's been really illuminating, Megan. I hope our audiences are able to sort of derive from that. It's really exciting for me to
I
be
just want to
talking.
give you one more tip, Susan, because this is actually a classic tip that I do give my clients, and I'll make it really quick, is that what I do is I ask people to listen. And once again, here's putting on your observer hat. Catch yourself when you hear yourself saying, this is what I should be doing. When you hear the word should, that indicates a belief. And the belief will have preceded the should. So then back up the truck and ask yourself, I just said should, what do I believe should happen? And you'll have a whole story and a whole belief system or a mindset behind what the should says. So there's your quick tip.
Thank you. That's a really great tip. Look out for the word should. And Megan's details will be posted below here. She's got a lot of really great free resources. Hop on and follow her. And thank you for your time, Megan.
Thanks, Susan.